now we're going to walk through setting up each of the ad extensions that make sense for your particular campaign. So in my example, I do have a local business, so a location extension would make sense here. Remember we talked about all of these in Module 1. We went through them in detail, what they were, what they looked like, etc. And so now I'm just going to walk you through how to actually set these up. So again, I'm working on Brenton Vision. And so because this is not my actual client, I don't have access to the Google My Business account for this company. But if you click on location extension and you bring this up, it'll basically sync to whatever email so if you're logged in under a specific email, it's going to pull whatever Google My Business locations are under that email. So if you have a different like Google My Business account that isn't associated with the email you're logged in with right now to your AdWords, what I would suggest doing is adding this email address that you're logged in with to AdWords as a manager or user on your Google My Business account. That way you can seamlessly just, when you're working in your account, you can make sure it's syncing with that email and you don't have to like log out and it gets kind of messy. So obviously I don't have any locations being synced right now because I don't have them associated with my email. But for you, I'm assuming that you would probably be using the same email address that you claimed your Google Places list. It used to be called Google Places. And if you don't have your location in your Google My Business account, I would suggest you go and do that and allow these two things to sync together. So that's a separate video that I can post in the group for everybody if you don't know how to do that. But basically you want to make sure you claim your listing on Google for your business. Claim it and make sure you have a Google My Business account set up. You'll want to do that anyways, regardless of whether or not you do AdWords or not. That's just something that you want to make sure you do, is to claim your listing. And then it'll sync right in here and it'll pull in the correct location information with your ads, and it'll actually display it underneath your ads. If you have multiple locations, it'll pull in all of them that are under your account, and it will actually choose which location is closest to the user, so it'll always be displaying the right location. So just wanted to point that out here. That's where you will hook up your location extension. Alright, so that's location extensions. And next we have site links. We want to go ahead and add site links to our ads as well. Now it's going to ask you to select at least 4 site links, and because this is brand new, we don't have any set up in our account yet. We are going to go ahead and set these 4 up real quick so you can watch how I do that. And again, remember that we are at the campaign level. You can have different site links for your account, you can have site links for your campaign, and you can have site links for your ad groups at the ad group level. So if you wanted to have different links appearing in different places based on relevancy to a specific ad group or to a specific campaign, or if you know that it's going to apply to everything in the account, you can apply it at the account level. Right now I'm just going to set these up at the campaign level. So I'm going to click add new site link, and for my link text I've got that over here in my planner. So I'm going to scroll over here to my site link section. So I'm going to just copy and paste this. We have financing available. Whoops. Put that in there. Oops, that's not the actual site link. Sorry. The financing options goes here. That's a link that will show up right underneath the ad as an actual hyperlink. And it's going to ask us to put in the URL here and financing options. Let's see. So you'll have to actually find this for, guessing that's here. So make sure that your site links go to actual relevant pages on your site. So I'm going to go paste that in here. And make sure you delete your HTTPS information. And you can have different site links show up with a preference for mobile versus desktop. This one's just going to be desktop. And then you've got 2 lines here that you can enter in a description for that. Now it's not required, but is recommended. And it doesn't always show. So that's something that this description does not always show. in the search engines, but it can. So it just depends on what Google feels like doing at the moment. It just really depends on where it's at and how much space, etc. So that's my description that I put in there for my first site link. You can actually schedule your site links. I typically don't. I usually just let them run all the time. And if your ads are not running, so if you have a schedule for your ads, you don't have to worry about putting that same schedule in here. But you can schedule your site links with a separate schedule from your ad schedule. There's special URLs for mobile. If you want to redirect them to a separate mobile URL, you can do that. Some sites have different URLs for mobile pages, but most responsive sites, it's the same URL. And then this is tracking information for if you are using a third-party tracking software, you can put those in here. Otherwise, just leave this blank. And all you have to do is add this information at the top. So I'm going to save that one. And once you add it, then for our campaign, it's going to automatically add it over here. But a lot of times when you're coming to this setup section, and if you already have site links added in your account, you can just select them from the list and add them like that. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the rest of them. Let's see, what's my next one? Types of LASIK procedures. I'm going to put that right there. And types of LASIK procedures, let's see. I'm going to use my procedures link from their site. And this will explain all the different procedures that are available. I'm going to put that in here as my final URL. Erase my HTTPS. And go grab my description. Put that in here. Grab this description. And I'm done. I'm going to add my period at the end there. I'm going to save that one. So I'm going to add my next. This one says affordability. I'm going to put that here. I'm going to send it to that same page that I sent to before called affordability. And you know, this is one thing that I think is cool, is that you can put different link text up here. And because like we just did one that was financing options, and it goes to this same affordability page. And you can do different link text to test which link text, you know, which words actually grab people's attention more and make them click. So that's a cool test that you can run. We do that a lot. I'm just putting these in here. Okay, almost done here. Hopefully you're doing this right along with me. Put in one more and then we'll be done with our site links. You can do more if you want, but we're just going to do the base for, we're going to do Meet Dr. Brenton. And hopefully there's a page on, yep, there's a Meet Dr. Brenton. And make sure for all of your site links that you do have somewhere that's relevant to send these people to. So I'm going to put my URL in there. There we go. And my description 1, description 2. Put that in there. And a lot of times, like when I used to first start, when I first started setting up AdWords campaigns, I just did all this on the fly. I just came up with it myself on the fly. Wasn't always so organized where we had it, you know, all written out beforehand. But it sure does help, I think, when you're going through the setup process, to not have to come up with the copy and everything as you go as well. It just seems like it's just a lot smoother this way. But you certainly can, you know, just write the copy as you go along. You certainly can do that. All right, so now I've got all of my site links set up, and so I'm done with that section. So now I can just move on to call extensions. So I want to check the box and say, please extend my ads with a phone number. And since again I don't have any phone numbers added, I'm going to have to add a new phone number. And in this case, I'm just going to add the phone number of the business. So that's right here. So if I can copy and paste that. It may not let me copy and paste it. Let me see if I can grab it from the bottom here. Yeah, there it is. There we go. Now in a later module, I'm actually going to show you guys how to set up call tracking for all of your AdWords campaigns. So if you're doing that, and if you're using a call tracking number, you would put the call tracking number in here instead of the business's actual phone number. And then the call tracking number will forward right to this number here. But that's something we'll cover in a later module. So for now, you can just use the main phone number. And I typically leave the call reporting turned on. So what this means is that if somebody clicks on that ad extension, it's going to track that as a call conversion. It's also going to create something called calls from ads as a conversion type, and that's where you'll see any activity from this ad extension under that calls from ads. And then again, you can set a device preference here. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll do one without this box checked, and then I'll come back and I'll add another one and I check this box. That's just what we typically do. And then down here under advanced, you can do start and end dates. You can schedule specific times. I think this is really helpful for businesses who have, you know, like a call center, or they're only available to answer the phone during their business hours. So you can create a custom schedule here and say, you know, I only want this to show during the hours that we're open. Let's see if we can find out when they're open. I'm assuming maybe like 8 to 5. Let's see. But that's a good rule of thumb to make sure that, you know, you don't want to encourage phone calls when nobody's there to answer the phone. So let's see if I can find their hours. Well, they're not posting their hours anywhere, but I better call them and tell them they need to put their hours on their site. But I'm just going to assume it's like 8 to 5 and just say, you know, that's when we want the ad extension to show. And here you're just telling it to report phone calls as conversion. So you can turn that off, but I typically like to leave it checked. Some people don't want this showing up as a conversion in their reporting data. That's just a personal preference. But this is what it will show is it'll show it as this particular conversion action so that you can tell the difference in your reporting. So then you're done with adding your phone number in there. So you've got it added. It's added over here on the right. So now you've got your call extension set up. Just remember, this is not a call only ad. This is just a call extension that'll be displayed on desktop or, you know, mobile or tablets right along with your ad. Okay, next is app extension. We're not going to do this type of extension for this campaign setup because I don't have any kind of app that we're advertising. I'm also going to skip the reviews for now because this one does get a little bit more in depth with setup. So I'm going to do this in a separate video to show you guys how to set up campaign review extensions. But basically you'll, just to give you a quick overview, you would go and find third-party reviews, and like we discussed in the call or in the ad extensions lesson, I go through it in detail about like where to pull these and what sources are good, etc. And then you can put those in here, either paraphrased or exact quotes, and put your source URL and save. So you can add those if you have them. And then next we have call outs. I definitely do want to add call outs. This is always one that there's almost never an example of a business that wouldn't have call out extensions. So we want to go ahead and add a new call out. And I'm going to go over here and grab my text. So I've got award winning as one. Oh, I'm going to say, and then again here you can add one for desktop and add one for mobile, and you can schedule these as well to show up at specific times if you need them to. So I'm going to save that one. It only requires a minimum of 2. So I'm going to do third generation, add that one, and save. Okay, so now I've got my 2 call outs. I've got more, but I just, for the sake of time, I'm just going to do those 2. And then finally, I've got structured snippets. So structured snippets, like we talked about in the ad extensions lesson, are basically like, it's kind of like a menu that will show beneath the ad. So in this case, first of all, we need to choose our header. So our header is just basically giving it like what the menu is listing. So in this case, what makes the most sense, I think, is a service catalog. And so I'm going to list out the different types of LASIK that they provide. So I'm going to click over here, And you can see they have all these different types of procedures. So this is what I'm going to put on this service menu for this particular business. See if I can get it to pull up here. Looks like this company also needs a little bit of help with their page speed. It's not loading very quickly. Let's see. Let me scroll down here and see if I can find the different types. There we go. There's one. Okay, so they've got one called SBK. Whoops. I'll go back up here.
Imagine waking up and instantly seeing the details of the world.
That's not what I meant to do. Okay, SBK is one. And then let's see what else we got. We've got the smile type. That here. And we'll do ICL. So these may not mean anything to a lot of people, but perhaps people that are doing research on these different types, maybe this would mean something to them and get them to click. Because it seems to me that, you know, not all LASIK providers, which I know for a fact, not all LASIK providers do all of these different types of procedures. So that just gives you an idea. It's going to display these beneath the ad. And again, you can do the device preference here, do one of both. You can schedule these, but most of the time it doesn't make sense to schedule. However, there are times when you might put something like, you know, a special menu of something like, let's see what example I could come up with here. Maybe you only offer certain things at certain times of day, certain days, dates, specific dates. That's really the biggest thing I could think of. But most of the time you're not going to mess with this. Okay, I'm going to click save there to save my structured snippets. And then I am done with my add extension section. So now I've got all of those added in, and we can move on to some of these advanced settings, and then we'll move on to creating our actual ads. All right, so first of all, I mentioned this in the ad extensions section we just went through, that you can schedule your ads. So just like you can schedule your ad extensions, you can schedule your ads to run at certain times. So for example, if you only want your ads to show when you're open, that's a possibility. If you only want them to show on certain specific dates, you can do that. You can create a custom schedule where you say, you know, on Monday through Friday, I want them to run 8 to 5 when we're open. Or you could say, you know, that I only want them to run on the weekends. And maybe you set up specific campaigns that are specific for the weekends versus the weekdays. There's all kinds of different things you can do here with what you call day parting. And later in the optimization module, I'm actually going to show you how to go in once your campaign has been running for a while and it has some data. I'm going to show you how to go in and look at your data according to day of the week and time of day. And what you can do with that data is see which days you get the highest conversion rates and which times of day you get the highest conversion rates. And then at that point, once you know, hey, you know, Tuesdays and Thursdays, those are our highest conversion days. And most of the conversions happen between, you know, 8 a.m. or maybe it's 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. You know, that's very common for that to happen. Then you can come back into this setting right here and change it to, you know, only run on those specific days and times to maximize your budget so that you're getting the most out of your budget. And there's some other ways that we can do that as well, which I'll show you at that time. But just wanted to show you that this is a possibility for scheduling out your ads. Okay, the next one on the list is ad delivery, ad rotation. And in this case, the default setting is to optimize and prefer the best performing ads. And Google says this is the ideal setting for most advertisers. But again, I'm going to disagree here. And the reason that I disagree is because sometimes I don't feel like Google necessarily knows which ads are always the highest performing. And sometimes it won't give certain ads enough of a chance. And so what I want to encourage you to do is we typically set this setting to rotate indefinitely. And what that means is just basically in a particular ad group, you have multiple ads. So you have all of your keywords and you have ads in an ad group. And all of the keywords will always be triggering, but those keywords aren't tied to specific ads. So for any given time that your keyword is triggering an ad, it could potentially be any of those ads in your ad set. So it's basically like, okay, how does Google decide which of the ads, say you have 4 in your account or in your ad group, which of those 4 ads is it going to show? Well, you can tell it to optimize the ads for conversions and show only the ads that are expected to provide more conversions. And obviously right now that's not supported because we don't have conversion tracking set up. You have to have a really healthy amount of conversions happening in your account every single day for this option to work. And even then, a lot of times we don't necessarily use this setting. We like to go in there and make the decision ourselves because we're in there watching and monitoring accounts all the time. So one thing I will say is an exception is if you know you're not going to be watching your ads closely, then you could go ahead and set one of these other settings, like, optimize for conversions, for example, once you have your conversion tracking set up. Otherwise, I recommend doing it this way. Just ignore what this says about not recommended for most advertisers. This is what we do in the beginning for almost all of our ad accounts that we set up. And like I said, sometimes we'll switch once it has a lot of good conversion data. We'll switch over to this, but we want to make the decision for ourselves. In the beginning, we like to watch them really close. So I encourage you to use this option here. Dynamic search ads, this was something we talked about up at the very top where we looked at that campaign type where you can have Google, literally you can type your landing page or your website in here, pick your language, and it will literally pull in and create automatically ads based on what it finds naturally through indexing of your website. So this is an option. We have experimented with this some, but most of the time we're finding that us going in and controlling exactly what we put in each ad, exactly which landing page it's going to, is the best way to set things up. So I'm just going to encourage you to ignore this section when you're setting up your first campaigns. And then the final option down here is only applicable to those of you who are using third-party tracking software or system other than Google Analytics. So my recommendation for all of you guys watching this is to set up a Google Analytics account if you don't already have one. And again, that's something I'll cover in a different video, but I highly recommend having Google Analytics because you can sync your Google Analytics account to your AdWords account and it will automatically pass all of these parameters and information about your ads, keyword performance, ad performance, campaign performance. It'll pull all of that data automatically into analytics, and it has this really amazing seamless integration between the two platforms. So unless you're just dead set on using another separate tracking system, then you can plug those in here. Otherwise, I would just use Google Analytics and it'll take care of it all for you. All right, so that is it for this screen. We've gone through all the settings on this screen. So once you feel confident here, you can go ahead and click Save and Continue at the bottom. And this will allow us to continue on to where we can actually set up our ads. Oops. All right, now it's going to bring us to the screen where we're going to set up our first ad group and our first ad within that ad group. So my first ad group, I'm going to jump back over here to my planning document where I've planned out all my ad groups, so it'll make this part really easy. So my first ad group is called LASIK Doctors. So I'm going to hop back over here and I'm going to name my ad group LASIK Doctors. And when you're creating your ad, it has this awesome little preview over here so you can see what you're creating as you create it. For this particular campaign type, we're just doing a basic text ad. We're not going to do a dynamic search ad or any of these. We'll cover those in later videos. And the first field is going to ask you for your final URL. That's your destination URL. That is the actual link that you're sending people to. So for this particular ad, I'm going to go back over here. I don't know, I can't remember if, no, we didn't put our URLs in here. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to find the best place to send my LASIK doctors ad group. So since this is talking specifically about the doctor, I am going to send this ad traffic to the page that's about Dr. Brenton. So I'm going to send it directly to this page. Again, the other site's a little bit slow loading. But this will feature, you know, Dr. Brenton and all about him. So if someone's looking specifically for a doctor, that's going to be a good spot to send them. So that's my final URL. That's the actual URL of the page. Now I'm going to go back over here and grab my headline. So the first headline that I have is Top LASIK Eye Doctor. I'm going to put that in there. We still have some characters that we could play with here. So I could put in St. Louis if that fits. No, that doesn't fit. So I could put Top St. Louis if it'll fit. Yep, that fit. So, you know, play around with these headlines. Again, I've got several different variations, and we're always testing. Like, we never just create like 1 or 2 or 3. We always have multiple ad variations running with different headlines and different things because we're always testing what's the best combination. So these are just a few examples. I'm going to put in my headline too. And again, what I'm doing right now is the expanded text format. So that used to be something called standard text ads, and they just switched over to this expanded text format or ad format that gives you more. It gives you more characters to play with in the headline. So it's now 2 headlines and a description that's really long, where before it was 1 headline and then 2 just like little description things. So you just didn't have as much space there. So headline 2, I put Dr. Jason Brenton, since this is focused on finding a doctor. This is LASIK doctors keywords. And then down here, it's going to give you an option for a display URL, and it's going to give you 2 path fields. So basically what these are is completely made up. You can make up whatever words you want to put here. Most of the time, we're only using this first field. Sometimes we'll use the second field if it makes sense, but most of the time we're just doing this first field. You have 15 characters here where you can put in a display URL. This display URL, so I'm just going to put doctor, I'll just put like Dr. Brenton, maybe I'll just do something like that. So basically this is for advertising purposes. This does not have to function. If they click on it, it's going to take you to this final URL. So the only way this could ever mess somebody up is if they literally opened up a new browser or tab and typed this in directly. It's not going to work, but that's not what most people do. They just click right on the ad. So it should be totally fine, even if it's not a functioning URL. But again, this is just for advertising purposes. So you could put something else here. You could put about, you could put just the word doctor. Just again, you want to make it relevant. So whatever they're searching for, you want to make sure that it seems like they're going to be redirected to a relevant page. And try not to put anything here that's misleading, because that won't be a good experience. All right, and then I'm going to copy and paste my description. Got that here. Make sure there's a call to action in your description. I've got some more space that I could play with. I could put a little bit more information in here. I could put, you know, award-winning. I noticed that on his website. Just make sure that you know, try to take as much advantage of this space as you possibly can. Include things that are, you know, credible, add credibility. Make sure you have actually I'm going to move this back here. Make sure you have a call to action. And I got an extra space in there. There we go. Okay, so now we've got, actually, Now I got my spacing right. So now you can see over here to the right what your ad looks like. Type in my path URL. So you've got your preview here on mobile, and then you can switch and see what it would look like on desktop as well. Now your ad extensions are not going to display in your preview. I will show you how to view your ad with the ad extensions on it. That's actually a tool over here that we can get to called Ad Preview and Diagnosis. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But for right now, you can see how your basic ad is going to display on mobile and desktop. And then down here you have, again, those custom tracking options if you're using a third-party system, or if you have a separate mobile URL. If you have one of those websites where your mobile site has completely distinct and different URLs, you'll want to put those in here. Otherwise, if you're on a responsive site and it's the same no matter what device you're on, you're going to just leave this final URL here. All right, so that is how you set up your actual ad, the text ad itself. And now you're going to move down here into the spot where you're going to plan you're going to enter in your keywords. Now, a lot of people will come straight to this step and they will not necessarily have planned out all their keywords over here like we have. And that's okay. I mean, that's okay if you want to do that step, because Google does provide a lot of suggestions right here in this step. The thing that you're missing from here is like competition level, estimated cost per click, search volume, just all those different types of things are obviously missing from this screen. So it's not going to be as extensive of a keyword, research and planning option as what we went through with the keyword planner. But with that being said, I will tell you that there is a lot of great keyword ideas and things that we've gotten from this particular screen right here. It gives you a ton of different categories. You can scroll through and look at all these different categories, and these are things that people actually type in. So Google is pulling this from queries that have actually been typed in, and it's pulling this information from the data that you're already giving it so far in this setup process. So if you see things over here that really stand out that you think are really great keywords, and make sure that you're not just going crazy adding keywords here that don't pertain to this ad group. For example, this one right here says, what does LASIK cost? Well, I know right now, yes, that's maybe a good keyword, but right now I'm in my LASIK doctors ad group. And I am going to have, I know from planning out my campaign structure, that I want to have a separate ad group for cost related terms. So I do not want to come here and add cost related terms in this ad group. That's going to mess up my whole campaign structure. It's going to mess up everything. So make sure you're only adding keywords, if you see some over here that are good, that match with this particular theme that you have going on. If you get too crazy with your keywords and they're not tightly grouped, you're going to have a lot of trouble with your campaigns. They're not going to perform as well. So just be careful with that. And also another thing that I'll point out here is when you add a keyword from this list over here, it does not bring over the match. There's no match types. So this is actually just added in as broad match. So I'm going to show you how to change these into the specific match types. All right, so here's my list of keywords I want to use for my LASIK doctors ad group. So I'm going to copy and paste those into the box here. And these are all broad match right now. And obviously, as we talked about in the first module, we all know now that we don't just put a bunch of keywords in here and just leave them. Those would all be broad match, and we know that that's not a good option. It's too broad, and it'll pull in all kinds of irrelevant traffic. So what we want to go do now is go through here and change these to the match types that make sense. And what I typically do is I take my base list, so I have 4 phrases in my list right now, and I make a different match type for each. So I'm going to do a broad match modifier for each, and the way I do that is I add this plus in front of each word in the phrase. So I'm going to do that to all my keywords. And the reason I do broad match modifiers and phrase and exact is because I want to figure out what keyword combination or phrase or match type is the most profitable and works the best. So I just don't want to make any assumptions right off the bat. That's why I'm gonna do all the different variations. So now I'm gonna do a phrase match on each by putting quotation marks around my phrase. I'm gonna do that with each one of these. I'm gonna erase my plus signs there. Do phrase match again. Now what'll happen when we get into the separate lessons where we talk about search queries and how to look at your keyword data and what's happening is that we'll see these broad match modifiers will bring in the most variable types of keywords. So you'll see really long tail keywords. The same will happen with phrase match, but not as much as broad match modifiers. But that'll help us to start to see, okay, what are all the different possible combinations that are out there, which will look something like this list actually that you see here. You'll see a lot of really long tail types of keywords showing up in your search terms report. And that data is going to be amazing data. That's where you'll spend a lot of your time after your campaign launches. But instead of just showing like it does here, where it's just like, here's some, suggestions, in your search queries report, you're going to see the actual query that someone typed in, and you're going to see what the click-through rate was on it. You're going to see if it converted. You're going to see, the conversion rates, cost per conversion. So we're going to have some really amazing data to make better decisions at that point on whether or not we do want to go ahead and add those keywords to our campaigns, or if we want to maybe exclude them if they're not good keywords. So the final thing that I'm going to add here is an exact match type on all of these as well. So to do exact match, we're going to put brackets around these to say it has to be exactly what we have typed in here, and it cannot have any words before or after the phrase. And if you need a refresher on the match types, just go back to module 1, and there's an entire lesson in there on all of these match types. All right, so now we've got all of our keywords in there for this ad group. And you can estimate the search traffic, but it won't pull that in if there are broad match modifiers. If I remove these, so I'm just going to remove them real quick to show you, and I don't have those, it'll pull in some data for you here. And it'll say, based on your max CPC of $10, which we put in the campaign settings, and based on your budget of $100 a day, you can expect 2 clicks per day, between $5.89 and $7.20 per day. And that's probably because this particular group of 4 keywords just doesn't have a lot of search volume specifically for this one. And that's why we're going to have several different ad groups, because we want to have volume between them all. As it says, this will take up about maybe $18 of our budget. So between all the other ad groups, our goal is to obviously get that to add up to $100 or more. So I'm going to add back in my broad match modifiers. All right, and it'll tell you that for this ad group, your default bid inherits the campaign default bid here of $10. Now you can change that if you want. So, this might be something you come back in and change later. Right now you probably don't have enough data, but if in your keyword research you found that, the one specific type of keyword that you're using in this ad group had a higher average cost per click than some of your other keyword themes, then you might go ahead and go in here and say, well, these types of keywords for somebody looking for a doctor usually ranged in the 15 to 20 range. Then I might change the default bid for just this ad group and make it a little bit higher, or vice versa. Maybe these types of keywords, including the word doctor, were cheaper. So maybe I would adjust this down a little bit and just make it 5 or 8. So you can do this at the ad group level if you saw those themes in your keyword research. But I'm just going to go ahead and leave mine the same. And again, you have your tracking options here. All right. So now you have actually gone through the process of setting up an ad and your keywords. So technically right now you have a complete ad group. Now it's not really complete because I haven't added all of my other ads. You want to make sure you have at least, at a very bare minimum, you need 2 ads always running, so you're always split testing at least 2 variations, but I suggest 4 or more, so that Google can really figure out which headline works best, which description works best. You can even test the display URL to see what works best there. But I would go ahead and add maybe 3 or 4 ads in there. So you can set up billing later, or if you're ready to go, you can go ahead and save and enter in your billing information. So I'm going to set up billing later. So that's the option I'm going to choose. But there you have it. You have gone through the entire campaign setup process. You've set up one ad group, and now you'll arrive at a screen that looks like this. So this is the actual AdWords interface that you guys are going to be in all the time. And I'm going to actually do a separate video where I walk through every single one of these tabs and show you how to kind of navigate around in them. But for now, you have successfully set up your first campaign. Just make sure you go back in and complete those same steps for every ad group that you have. So in my example, I'm going to go back through and set up another ad group for laser eye correction and add my keywords and add all of my ads in that one. So you'll want to make sure that you do the same thing and repeat that until you have everything completely set up. And then I will meet you back here in the next video to go through the AdWords interface and how to really navigate through all this information and all the ads that you've just set up. So I will see you guys in the next lesson.